Hello and welcome to the Monday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's ready to perform whatever the weather. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Yes, I am.
We've played some low-degree soccer.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done some low-degree podcasts when the heating doesn't work in our office.
Yeah, or very high-degree podcasts.
Yep.
That's happened
when the
more
AC doesn't
frequently.
work.
Yeah.
Hello, June, July, August.
Yeah, that was real fun. Then like recording in shorts and like one T-shirt.
Yep.
And sweating the whole way through.
But we got it done.
We did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as did Atlanta United.
They certainly did. So we're going to talk all MLS this show. We're going to start out talking about Minnesota v Atlanta, which I know Minnesota fans maybe will not want to hear about, but we'll at least have some idea of why that 6-1 win for Atlanta happened. And it is a little bit of Atlanta brilliance and a little bit of Minnesota disorganization. We'll drill down into that. We're also going to talk about LA-Portland, a good win for Portland away to LA. And then we're going to sort of round up the rest of the league looking at the performances of US men's national team hopefuls, the guys who are on the bubble, who may be in or out of Bruce Arena's World Cup qualifying roster, which is announced when, Taylor?
I believe March 15th,
which
is Wednesday.
Yeah, it is Wednesday. That's what my calendar says.
That's what you said on the last show, so that's what I'm sticking with.
Am I your news source?
Yes.
We've established a weird loop here.
Yeah. We're in a bubble, yeah.
All right, shall we start in Minnesota, where it was 25 degrees Fahrenheit, where the expectation was that Minnesota, in their first home game, the weather, the circumstances, the conditions would be too much for Atlanta and their South American attacking quartet, and that this would be a home advantage for Minnesota. Turns out it wasn't, because they were 1-0 up real fast, and it ended 6-1 to Atlanta.
Yes, and we've seen like the footage at times throughout the years of like there being a little bit of snow in Atlanta and it completely shuts down the city and there's gridlock everywhere. And maybe that like informed this idea, but I think as you said before we started watching,
it was a City of Atlanta employees working in this game.
Well, no, but it was more so as you pointed out, like there's a chance these guys have seen snow before, right? Like, it's not as though they're going to walk in there and be like, what is this situation? I have no idea what to do anymore.
And like, someone correct me if I'm wrong. It snows in Argentina. It snows in Paraguay.
I would say so.
This isn't new to these guys.
No. I mean, it's certainly new to like have to have stoppages so that they can clear the lines so you can actually see the field. But even so, it does make me now wonder. I mean, obviously, with hindsight being 2020, if it was a little bit overblown, if there was too much emphasis on the weather, if there was too much emphasis on Atlanta are really going to struggle, Minnesota, we're going to be used to this, we'll take it right to them. And instead, Atlanta pretty much took it to Minnesota from the outset.
So I think it would have been, the story anyway would have been Minnesota's first home game in Major League Soccer. Right? Especially after the way the first game away to Portland was 5-1. Went, this was a cause for celebration and a chance to restart. So I think the weather was just like an extra layer on top that we all got excited about. Shall we talk about how it all went wrong then? I think Atlanta fans might enjoy this part.
Yeah, and again, I think to your point, Minnesota fans as well, just because there were, it's not as though it was just sort of like Atlanta's brilliance and Minnesota just couldn't hang with it. It really was. I think Atlanta were definitely brilliant on the day. I think Minnesota were set up to fail and definitely did not execute the game plan that I assumed that they were trying to execute.
Yeah, and don't you think? Okay, we'll get into the specifics in a second, but the game plans of the two teams, I think Atlanta's game plan was more suited to the conditions, and not necessarily by design, because this is how Atlanta, I think, are going to play all season, which is to press, win the ball back, and then move it quickly, one-touch attack to sort of counter high.
Crap field, crap conditions, crap result. That's what I was taught when I was 12, and it applies here. That
not to Atlanta, it doesn't.
No, but if it's going to be bad field conditions, if you're going to struggle for visibility as well as for the playing surface, then you don't want to try to like really possess the ball, or you really don't want it to be this like slow build up. You want to put the team under pressure. You want to force them into making bad decisions because they're already going to be potentially making bad decisions because of the conditions. And Atlanta did that very well. I don't think Minnesota did. Yeah,
because if you slow the game down, try to move the ball around, eventually you'll make a mistake, especially in the snow. If you're just going to like rapido, move the ball quickly and put it between the defenders, and you're going to try and win it back high to get the ball back in the first place, that's going to work because it's so easy to make mistakes in the snow.
And and that's the key point there, I think, is that even there were times Greg Garza was involved in it where there was like really good, quick 1 and 2 touch passing from Atlanta.
Is it about the 30th minute? I loved that spell of possession.
Yeah. And it was number 1 in Minnesota's defensive third, and that's where I think you can afford to try to have that bit of possession. You're not doing it building out of the back where you might make the mistake. But the other idea is that pressing makes sense in this situation because of the weather, but playing quickly makes sense as well because if you take that touch and you take another touch and you kind of slow it down, that's more opportunity for the ball to have a weird bounce, for a random piece of ice to suddenly be there, or for you to slip. The more time you're on the ball, the more likely you are to make a decision. I know that is kind of like law of averages, period, but it's exacerbated by the snow. You look at Atlanta, it was 1-2 touch passing the whole time. You never really have that time to get caught up.
There's no stop, look around, think about what my options are, go, ooh, it's cold.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And so you look at the first goal. I mean, there are other better examples of it, but to start, I think it makes sense to start in the beginning, which is just, it's like a very combination of like smash and grab and counterattack and quick passing all at once from Atlanta.
So Atlanta do have the ball in the back. And what I think happens is Minnesota kind of try to press, but it's a really disorganized press, right? I can't remember who it is that goes, but the ball is just easily played through. And then isn't there a scramble between Taysom, the new defender,
and Molino?
I think Taysom plays it into Molino.
He does. He tries to clear it. It goes off Molino, and that's what basically sets up the counterattack for Atlanta.
Oh no. So a perfect example of just snow blindness, I want to call it.
Yeah, but it's so you have that cut. Here's a great example, basically. So you have that confusion where it's a panic. I'm going to try to clear. I'm going to kick it off my own player, and then
that wasn't the plan.
No, but compare that to then the ball gets played into Almiron, who does a one touch outside of the left foot, just like slide pass. That's what sets in
Martinez.
Thank
Joseph
you.
Martinez, or as I've got him in my notes, it was just for succinctness, but I actually kind of like it. J Mart.
That works, and then he's an on goal. That's because I think Calvo tries to hold the line, but Taylor stays. That's what allows him to be onside. We think it did look like he was offside, but that might have just been the angle.
I think that's the angle. But if they'd all stepped with Calvo, he would have been offside. And if Thiessen, who's the right back, hadn't sort of gone all the way out, then I think who's the other one? I've forgotten his name. Demidov. He goes charging out as well.
Yep.
So look, every defender is doing something different.
That's right. He tries to break up the play. I think the ball from Almiron, who plays that one-touch pass, so then the on-rushing player is completely bypassed by a one-touch beauty of a ball. And then it's even further, like we saw it consistently, that back line, to call that a line is very generous. To call it like a zigzag,
more of a wiggle.
Far more accurate. More of a wiggle. And so, that was evident here. That was evident on later goals. And again, it points to a lack of familiarity and a lack of maybe cohesiveness in that defense, which is even further made clear by in the beginning of the game. There's the Julie Stewart-Banks interview with Adrian Heath.
Yes.
I always want to pause for a second because I always want to say Adrian Healy, given that he was doing the commentary for this game.
For this game.
So that always throws me for a moment. But Adrian Heath, in talking about Thiessen, is that how you pronounce that one?
It's how I pronounce it.
Okay. Basically saying, he's played...
Daryl at TotalSockShow.com.
Sure. He's played a bunch in the Swiss League, and
he has 300 starts in the Swiss League.
Yeah.
I honestly think maybe mid-2000s MLS, that would be enough for him to come into the league and look good. 2017 MLS, 300 starts in the Swiss League does not prepare you for the onslaught of South American attackers that Atlanta are throwing your way.
Or prepare you just for the little things here and there, like Greg Garza being very clever.
Yeah.
Because on that first goal...
I forgot this. Yeah.
Almiron plays the ball in, and basically Garza is initially making the run in because he wants the ball.
He's an overlapping full left back, right? So he's bombing down that left,
When he doesn't get it, he comes inside and essentially sort of stiff arm, sort of puts an arm up to block Thiessen.
I'd take the sorta out of that.
And kind of runs him off to the extent that I think by the end of it, he does kind of give him a little bit of a shove and sends him even further inside, away from J-Mart. And so just even those little moments of... you can just see the confidence and aggression of the Atlanta players and the sort of reactiveness of the Minnesota players by comparison.
From a US national team perspective, I kind of liked the cynicism. I guess Minnesota fans will hate it, but Atlanta fans will like it. US national team fans might like it. The cleverness and cynicism of the Greg Garza stiff arm, which really does really open that path for Martinez to go in on goal.
Yeah,
you've got to love that.
You do.
Also, I guess there's no NFL in Switzerland, so that's why Thiessen had never seen the stiff arm before.
That's right. NFL Europe. I don't think they ever made their way to Switzerland, so who knows? But you have that moment. You have, as we said, that kind of really nice passing sequence in the 30th minute. The final goal in the 94th minute. It is a Greg Garza chipped ball in, so he does get that assist. So all of that makes you optimistic if you're a U.S. fan. The only caveat I would say is that it's very dependent upon what Bruce Arena wants from his fullbacks.
You talk about whether Garza makes the roster or not, based
because
on this. Yeah.
If you want a very attacking fullback who's going to create chances, play the ball in, disrupt things, based on Sunday's performance, that's Greg Garza. But if you want somebody who's going to stay home, be a bit like more sound defensively. I'm not saying that necessarily isn't Greg Garza, but on the basis of what he's been doing for Atlanta, it doesn't quite fit.
Yeah. It does make me optimistic though for weren't we praising Villafania, who's maybe our choice for left back for his ability to like do combinations and 1-2s and get forward. Yeah. At least seeing that Garza can do that as well.
Absolutely.
And I was imagining like Garza and Nagby together might be a decent spot. Oh, it's going to be Fabian Johnson though, right? Yeah. Either way, it's all good.
Either way.
I mean, I guess we could go through all the Atlanta goals, but essentially, whether it involves Assad or it involves Almiron or it involves Villalba and Joseph Martinez, it's always a sequence of Minnesota being disorganized and Atlanta absolutely making the most of that disorganization with quick one-time passing that splits the defense in half. And you puts guys in on goal. It's one-on-ones with the keeper many times.
So many times. And you could say that this is my inability to like read a roster correctly. Right. I'm going to say it's Atlanta's ability to have an incredible number of playmakers. Yeah. That every single time I'd be like, oh, okay, that was Almiron. And you'd be like, oh no, that was Assad. Or like I'd be like, oh, that was Assad. No, that was Villalba. Like every single one of them is so capable of playing that quick, smart, intelligent possession soccer that it's tough to know who they are. It's tough to see the differences, basically.
And I want to go to my prediction for the season. Remember we did our Eastern Conference predictions?
I know. I saw you scowl when I mentioned that sixth goal. I know why.
Mine was that Atlanta would have the highest percentage of Spanish language goal scorers because of that sort of attacking quartet I mentioned, plus maybe some Pires headers coming out of the back. They had scored, 5 goals in this game, 1 goal in the previous game, all Spanish language speakers. I was on for 100%. They were keeping it 100, as Larry Wilmore would say. And then in the last minute, towards the end, Jacob Peterson pops up and heads home that Greg Garza cross. I mean, wonderful that Greg Garza gets an assist, ruins the percentage.
Yeah, I was going to
ruins
say,
it.
It's like Almiron, Ramirez, Martinez, and then there's Jacob Peterson. It doesn't quite fit.
And now I think Houston has the 100% Spanish language record.
Yeah.
But the season is long. The season is long, and I still have faith.
Yeah. I think Ramirez might not be in there. That might have been a mistake on my part, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. I also want to say to the other point that we had about like Atlanta's pressing, I don't want to go goal by goal either, but the second goal I think is very important in my mind because it's an example of Minnesota. I think trying
the one-man press?
Yeah, trying to do a press, but trying to do that sort of irregular press in the sense, I forget who it is.
It's Colin Warner.
Thank you.
If you watch this goal, Colin Warner is the holding midfielder for Minnesota. Yep. He goes charging out on his own to try and press the ball. No one goes with him. So all he's done is leave a giant Colin Warner-sized hole in defensive midfield, and then everybody else has to sort of shuffle around to try and fit it. I think it's Schuler tries to come across, and Atlanta just pick it apart.
Well, it's a big part of it is that I can understand the first attempt because Warner realizes there's a person who's unmarked in the middle of the field. I'm going to step to him. But that player turns and drops it all the way back to, I think it's Gessel. Gessel? Is that how you pronounce that? Gressel, thank you. Yeah. And he basically then continues that run. Warner continues to try to put him under pressure, which opens up a huge hole in the midfield. And I think it's Schuller is trying to fill it by tracking Almiron, but he's not, I guess, a defensive midfielder because he completely stops tracking Almiron, who continues that run, is wide open.
Well,
it's a great ball.
In, right?
Yeah, it's a great ball from Gressel, admittedly splitting 4 different Minnesota players. Right. But because of that one person trying to press when nobody else was, it opens up the entire midfield, and Atlanta, with that quick passing, are able to just completely carve it apart.
Will you indulge me in an analogy?
Sure.
Maybe for people who aren't as savvy with tactics, imagine you've got a coat's a good example here because it was really cold. You got a coat you really like. You want it to stay together for as long as possible. If there is one thread that starts hanging loose, you know that this coat is coming apart, right? Because you can't, even if you cut it, I'm not very good with sewing stuff, but if you cut it short, for the cosmetic look, you know that that's going to unravel more. Yeah. There's just, once that one thing is hanging loose, it's all over.
Right.
That's what I say. And that is Colin Warner is the thread who comes loose by charging forward, and Minnesota's coat is exposed, and the cold wind of Atlanta United's quick passing blows through.
I would say, though, it's not Warner who's the loose thread. And I'm going to put you on the spot here because I'm going to say, based on a comment that you made as this game ended, I would argue that the loose thread is Adrian Heath.
Oh.
Because the game ended, Daryl Grove, not one prone to dramatic emotional reactions, immediately said, I would fire Adrian Heath.
I mean, that was my reaction after the game.
Yeah.
I don't want to be held to that because it's harsh after 2 games. But if you look at Adrian Heath's record with Orlando as an expansion franchise, and with this Minnesota team so far has lost 5-1 and 6-1, it is going to get better. But I imagine like a long-term success for Minnesota, it's not Adrian Heath at the helm, right?
No.
It's probably not. So I'm imagining maybe get rid of him now and just be like, oh, we did not prepare properly for this season at all.
Yeah.
We should start fresh. I don't think that's going to happen. But that was my knee-jerk reaction after the final whistle. I don't have many knee-jerk reactions.
You don't? That's why it stuck out to me. But, I mean, I see where you're coming from, though, because even that 5-1 loss to Portland, it's Portland, they're an established team.
Yeah, and most of the goals came late. There was that.
So you have like 3 different extenuating circumstances.
This is different. Most of the goals came early.
Most of the goals came early against a team that did not look like they were particularly well organized and maybe not wearing the right jerseys either because gray in the snow.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
So, Richmond Kickers head coach Lee Cowdershaw, he had a comment on Facebook, I think we saw this, that he went back to the Man United Southampton game.
I think it was like the 20th anniversary this weekend.
Right, when the weather was bad. Man United started in grey jerseys in bad weather, and they claimed at halftime they just couldn't see each other.
Basically, they were down, and by all accounts, it was the worst they had ever looked under Sir Alex Ferguson. And they went at halftime. Yeah.
Switched jerseys, and I think they came back and won the second half.
They did.
Right? Maybe those grey jerseys of Minnesota were a bad choice in the wind. Sorry, in the snow.
Well, either one.
Because then you lose each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's an actual thing. And that's maybe some planning from the club that could have gone better.
Yeah. So who knows if they get better jersey colors later in the season or for next season. And who knows if Adrian Heath will be there when they do. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Should we move on to Sunday's other televised game, LA-Portland?
Yep.
It finished 1-0 to Portland. There was an early-ish goal, 8th minute, I think,
yep.
goal from Diego Chara, who we checked again, still not eligible for the US men's national team.
Still not eligible.
Still far too Colombian to be so.
Mm-hmm. And we timed it because it's from an LA corner. Yeah. It's cleared by Olam. It's picked up by Blanco. Blanco plays a long ball into Diego Chara, who does a perfectly cushioned header at a full sprint into the path of Diego Valeri, who takes it to the end line, squares it to Diego Chara, who taps it home.
How does Chara make that header?
I don't know, but I can tell you this: 14 seconds from that flicked-on header to when the ball hits the back of the net. I mean, it's difficult. Like, I remember there was a challenge, like, I think we had to do when we were training, was to run, like, the full length of the field in under 13 seconds, like 10 times in a row. Like, they did that with 1 second extra, but with the entire ball. Like, that's fairly impressive, I have to say.
And we had a disagreement in studio. Was Blanco looking for Chara? I absolutely say yes, because I think he sees Chara running, you watch him track him, and he plays the ball ahead of him. I think Blanco, with that long ball from the left, is trying to play Chara through on goal, but Chara has other ideas. He wants to do that weird header pass to
that could be
to Valeri.
Well, you say weird header. I think that's all he can do in that situation, because I think to try to chest it and settle it like coming over the shoulder, I think it's going to be far more difficult than just to play in Valeri and continue that run. But to go back
how hard is that header? Like, how often would you try that header and just like head it out of bounds? Right?
I don't know, but I'm not Diego Valeri or Diego Chara. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not Diego Valeri either.
None of the Diegos.
Yeah. But to your point, I think it's because you see him pick his head up, Blanco, and when he does, Diego Chara is maybe only like 10 yards ahead of him off on the right. Yeah. And then he looks back at Valeri, then he looks back at Chara, and then he plays that ball. And if you will look on the reverse angle when he plays that ball, you see him do that sort of like he like leans over like, that wasn't. And it just gives me the impression that maybe that's not exactly where he meant to put it.
Yeah.
But it is also like inch perfect onto Chara's head.
It is.
So, you know, I could be persuaded either way.
Okay. But we're talking about an Argentinian, a Colombian, unfortunately, and another Argentinian, right? I want to talk about the Americans in this game.
Sure.
Darlington Nagbe, we were watching him because he might be, he's hopefully, I want to say, in that US men's national team roster.
Yeah.
Sebastian Lletget is a guy that's really sort of on the bubble, which is a phrase only learned in America, but it essentially means like he could be in or he could be out, and it's really a 50-50 kind of deal. We had said Jermaine Jones would be in this game. Jay Rodius, Jared from Best Luck Show, let us know on Twitter that Jones was actually suspended because of that weird sort of video review MLS disciplinary committee. So we didn't get to see Jones v Nagbe. Right. But we did see Nagbe, we did see Lletget, and not for the national team, but for this go round, we also saw Marco Farfan playing left back. So what did we make of, let's say, let's talk LA a little bit. What did we make of Lletget's performance?
I think it's difficult to say, really, because you have that relatively early red card in the 34th minute or
we'll get to that. People want to hear about that, right?
Yeah, that's
we'll
when Yo Van Dam gets sent off, and so obviously already 1-0 down.
Yeah.
Man sent off, captain sent off, central defender sent off. It's going to change what you're going to try to do if you're Los Angeles. So I think it's tough to say like from an attacking standpoint.
There's a positive version of it where he got to play right wing for a bit, and then after the sending off, he played sort of more central defensive midfield. So at least he displayed his versatility again.
Yeah, I mean, and has an amazing stop in the 72nd minute. He basically Adi threw on goal. I forget who the center back is for LA, but tries to make a play, misses it, and it's a 2-on-none breakaway essentially. And Adi is not known for his pace, but does a very good job to like sense Leggett coming and does that sort of cut back inside, steps across him. Leggett still works really hard to get around that.
And he tries the Gaza strong arm as well.
Yeah, and I mean Leggett. He is not the one who actually breaks up the play, but essentially he's the one who forces Adi around the goalkeeper, slides, forces Adi to cut back, and then I think it's Garcia who comes sliding in and has the actual block.
Yeah.
But it's still the incredible effort from Leggett is what prevents Portland from going up 2-0.
So he doesn't break up the play, but he is the guy that puts like a bed of nails in front of the tyres that are going forward. He definitely slows it down enough that someone else can break it up. So that bodes well for Leggett. Bruce Arena was there as well. We didn't know. We knew he was at the Dallas Sporting KC game. Sporting KC Dallas game. Then suddenly we saw Bruce Arena in the stands. I think we thought maybe he just wandered out of his office and there's a game.
I think that was your thought. I'm glad to think that he was there for this specific reason because I think I think he is trying to kind of hammer down those final couple of spots. I think Leggett is one of those ones who's on the bubble, as you said. So I think he definitely wanted to see what he did in this game. Whether or not he... Like I would say he helped his case just from that play and from his overall play, but it's tough to say once you go a man down.
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Jelle Van Damme red card. It was 2 yellow cards, right? He was not happy about it. He put some tweets out afterwards of people diving off of cliffs, implying that the 2 yellow cards he got, there was a foul on Guzman was the second one. The first one was on Chara. 2 yellow cards there. He says no contact in either. What do we say?
I think he's right. I don't think
do too.
If anything, there's very minimal contact on Chara. We watched it a couple different times. It didn't seem like there was anything. I don't think there's anything there. Now, the commentators said that they had confirmation that he was booked for dissent for the first one.
He was so angry that the foul was given and the ref gave him a card for that?
Yes, but it was still listed as unsporting behavior, right?
Which is that kind of foul is unsporting behavior.
Yeah. And so I don't know what he actually got that booking for. If it was dissent, then that's one thing. If he got a foul, if he got a yellow for the foul, I would imagine that one maybe gets looked at a little bit. And then the second one on Guzman, there's no contact at all. That is an obvious dive.
And don't be fooled by the fact that Guzman is so injured he has to come out. Guzman is injured because his left shoulder hits the floor hard. Because he dove.
Well,
right?
it's because I think this is where maybe Brad Friedel did the analysis that it's essentially he's looking for the contact. He leaves that leg out, but there is no contact.
Get it, right?
No, but because he leaves the leg out, he is moving at a very fast pace. And so when there's no contact, it sort of is like suddenly he falls, and now it's in a completely uncontrolled way because he's expecting it. It sends him off kilter a little bit, and that's why he hits the ground as hard as he does.
Yep, but he injured himself.
He absolutely injured himself.
Unless there's some weird camera angle we see where Van Damme is like faster than the human eye and pushes him over. I think Jelle Van Damme is really hard done by here. Okay, so that's in some ways, the good news for LA Galaxy fans is that we absolutely agree that Van Damme should not have been sent off. The good news for Portland Timbers is that this is, I want to say, a plan. I honestly think that they knew Jelle Van Damme steps hard, right? He's an aggressive defender. That's why he's effective. But you can sort of get him sent off, and I honestly think that's what they tried and succeeded.
See, when I make these conspiratorial theories, you tease me.
Yeah.
This seems like a bit of a conspiracy theory that they knew that he was going to be aggressive in stepping, so they should know that if he comes, just be prepared to fall down and he'll pick up yellow cards?
Yes.
You think it would be that level?
I mean, it worked, right?
So then you think Caleb Porter is telling his team to take dives?
I think he's saying, like, Van Damme's coming for you, make sure to make the most of it every time he comes and fouls you, I mean, I don't want to accuse Caleb Porter of really heavy-level conspiracy where he's got Portland Timbers players practicing diving. But I think they knew Van Damme was coming, and they knew that they could take advantage of that and get him sent off. And you saw how it shook LA to the core, right? Like, Van Damme is such a leader that even as he is leaving the field, he called a huddle and talked to his team on the field.
Right?
That's how important he is. He wasn't keen to leave either, right?
It definitely seemed also like he should have been sent off right away. Like, if you get a red card, you have to leave the field of play. He was out for a good 3 or 4 more minutes walking around, talking to people, getting annoyed.
I think he had the advantage of Guzman being injured, right? So then that buys him some time because play's not about to restart.
Well, yeah, because it's a yellow card offense. It means that the player can be treated on the field. Same thing for a red card offense. But even so, he's still got a red card. Like, it should be the official's job to get him off the field. And it makes me feel like the official...
He's supposed to be in the showers, right?
Yeah, I feel like the official was just like, yeah, you're real big. I don't want to deal with you. And I'll say this as well. I think to your point, though, if you watch if you watch the game live without knowing that Jan Van Damme thinks that everybody dove, you see those tweets. Because that informed, I didn't see this live. I saw it after having seen those tweets, after hearing a little bit about the story.
Thanks, Office DVR.
Yeah, but when you watch those fouls without that in your mind, they look like fouls. They look, or watch those, fouls in quotes, they look like actual fouls because he is coming through so hard. The Guzman one especially, I was like, oh, yep, that's definitely a yellow. Like, he is done. Right. And then you watch the replay and you see, no contact, but the way he came through, you understand why the referee would think there was contact.
And then, to me, if you add up like the cynicism but effectiveness of getting Van Damme sent off, added to the sort of clinical counter-attacking effectiveness of that Blanco Chara Valeri Chara goal, that goal, I think you've got a really sort of efficient and ruthless Portland Timbers for 2017.
That you do, my friend.
So plenty more MLS to talk about on the second half of today's show, including some US men's national team performances. But first, today's episode is sponsored by the wonderful people at Fuji.
That's right. Fuji, makers of the highly engineered soccer rebounder that combines soccer and squash. And I'll say this, Mr. Grove, I need some Fuji in my life.
You need some Fuji in your life?
I think we need to start playing Fuji a little bit more often.
Why is that?
Played this weekend, and the team that we don't play together. Missed a volley, missed a header. Should have scored both, probably.
You did?
So I feel like if I were playing Fuji, we'd be doing some headers only. We'd be doing some volleys only. I think I'd be better suited. That's all I'm saying.
My comeback to you is we played Fuji last weekend.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
So what's your excuse?
That doesn't, because it's got to be the competitive. We both have cleats on. We're sort of like pretending like we don't really care who gets the point, while we both secretly definitely care about who gets the point. That sort of competitiveness. Because I need that in my life.
Last week we played in Lot 8 at RFK Stadium, and it was fun, right? It was with our friends. We'd gone to see DC United, but it was kind of casual. And it is true that when you and I put the camera on and we set up for some Fuji and we're fully dressed, and I'm wearing a Wolf shirt or an England shirt,
it's a little different.
I am ready to go.
Can I also say 5 days a week doing this show really changes perspective. I thought that was like a month ago that we played Fuji in DC United's parking lot. I can't believe that was a week ago. Time is terrifying.
If you're new to the show, Fuji is essentially soccer meets squash.
Right.
It's a rebounder with a court, and you take it in turns. You have to strike the ball against the net, land it back in the court, then your opponent tries to do the same. It is harder than it sounds.
It is indeed, and it's all about that rebound, which is why we have Fuji bringing us the rebound of the week.
Yes, and also I'll give credit to you for quick reactions. When we talked about what will be our MLS rebound of the week, you were straight on it.
With Atlanta.
Yes.
It's the obvious one. Yeah. You come back from what I would say was a pretty upsetting loss for what it seems like for Atlanta fans, given that they're up 1-0, things seem good. Red Bulls come back and get those two.
Yeah.
So to go away to Minnesota, as we talked about for all the reasons, to then pull out a very strong win on the road, it's a big bounce back for Atlanta.
And we even said, I think we said 25 degrees. I heard on the Goalmouth, Brooks' episode this morning, that it was actually 19 degrees and the coldest MLS game in history, 6 degrees colder than MLS Cup 2016 in Toronto. Yeah.
That's cold.
So hopefully the temperatures bounce back in the Great North.
So that's mine. What about Mr. Grove?
I think, so I was going to go San Jose. San Jose were 2-0 down to Vancouver, came back to win 3-2. But I'm not going to go San Jose because, one, Vancouver had a man sent off, so that makes your comeback easier. Yeah. Two, Tommy Thompson was subbed off at half-time. So I'm against that. Yeah. And three, Jackson Ewell wasn't anywhere near the team. So instead, I'm going to go Seattle.
Yep.
So we saw the extended highlights of Seattle v Montreal. All the comebacks were against Canadian teams, apparently. 2-0 down until, the 83rd minute or so. They pull it back to 2-2. We'll talk more about this game a little more in depth later because we're going to look at Clint Dempsey's performance, Jordan Morris's performance, and so on. But it's Seattle for coming back to equalise.
All right. Well, Seattle were able to come back and equalise. I was not able to help my team get goals. I think we needed one. We ended up equalising.
I feel bad because this is kind of my team as well, but I'm not playing this year. So I want you guys to do well without me.
If you want to do well, then we need to start playing some Fuji. And if you out there listening would also like to hone your abilities, hone your skills, you can do so by getting a Fuji, and using our promo code, you can get a Fuji at a discounted rate.
The most discounted rate, the absolute best discounted rate in the world is to go to playfuji.com, www.playfuji.com. Fuji is spelled Futchi. The link will be in the show notes, as will some video of us playing. I'll put the link to there too. The discount code is TSS, the letters TSS 2017. TSS 2017. That will give you the biggest possible discount on a Fuji. If you were thinking about getting a Fuji, now is the time to do it because this is the biggest discount you can get.
Alrighty, thank you to Fuji for sponsoring this show. And with that, should we get back to some MLS, specifically some Americans?
Let's
in MLS?
go. Should we go the order we watch this in?
Sure. But first I want to say, so if you missed last week, part of the reason why we were so excited for MLS this weekend was because we looked at Bruce Arena's kind of like hints at who would be on the roster. We realized there was like 3 spots remaining thereabouts to make the actual roster for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. A large percentage of those players are playing in Major League Soccer. So we felt like this weekend, knowing that Bruce Arena was going to be at Sporting KC, now knowing that he was at LA, it seems like he was watching a lot of different players.
He said he had staff at other games. And obviously, like we said, he probably has the MLS Live Plus subscription.
Yeah, I think so. Where
this user can watch any game.
So we were basically trying to figure out what players might be able to play themselves into his good graces and might have the negative situation of playing themselves out of Bruce Arena's good graces.
So one of those guys, it was all about an injury, right? Bruce Arena said he wanted Tim Howard to be healthy and to be able to participate in the World Cup qualifier against Honduras. So the first game we lined up on MLS Live was New York Red Bulls versus Colorado Rapids. And guess who was starting in goal for Colorado?
It was Timmy Howard.
It was Tim Howard.
I got it right.
I already knew this because there'd been some reports on Twitter of really good saves from Tim Howard.
I stand by my initial guess as to what this was going to be, which is that Tim Howard had some good saves, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I saw a lot of reaction as though Tim Howard had kind of done that Secretary of Defense type of like performance. Yeah, where it was just like he couldn't be beaten except by his own man, which is what happened in this game. And that's not quite what it was, but it was definitely a very strong performance from Tim Howard. I think it was basically intensified by the fact that everybody wants him to be back in full fitness so that he can be starting in these qualifiers.
But I get it. I get being excited even about just a regular Tim Howard performance. It's better than an injured Tim Howard. So for those who don't have the background, since November, when Tim Howard tore his adductor while taking a goal kick against, I believe, Costa Rica, or was it Mexico?
It might have been Mexico.
I think it was Mexico now, I'll say it out loud. Tim Howard has been injured. This was his comeback game, 2 weeks, maybe less than 2 weeks? 11 days before the game against Honduras.
Right.
So, he looked fine. He took goal kicks. His adductor stayed in one piece. I think that's how adductors work. I think they're one long piece.
Sure.
And he also made a couple of really good saves. The two standouts, I want to say, are on Bradley Wright Phillips, when Sasha Kleshton slips him in, and Phillips is essentially one-on-one with Tim Howard. Howard stays big, blocks BWP.
Yeah, it's that low 1v1 save that I think goes off of his the underside of his left arm, but that's because he gets down but gets his arms big enough, gets them wide enough to deflect that ball.
Classic Timmy Howard, right? Spotting danger, coming out and closing it down. The second one is, I want to say, sort of a reaction save, right? Is it Felipe? I
believe it is,
for New York. Hits it from distance, and Howard is diving one way. The ball bends in the air. It's got that knuckle, right? It's got that. They call it English. I don't call it English. It's got that knuckle on it, and bends the other way. Howard diving in one direction, pulls his arms back across the other direction, and keeps it out.
Yeah, I mean, but see, even there, that's absolutely true, and it's a very good save. But to hear the announcers describe it is to hear Tim Howard with an amazing acrobatic save, and really what he does.
It was Gordon Banks against Pele in 1970.
But he's basically diving right outstretched, and then it knuckles back, and he kind of pulls his hands into his chest, and that's where he parries it away. But it's still really well done to gauge that movement. He has a save early on that's like a kick save on a breakaway. He has another couple more that are relatively close that really could have been goals probably, if not for Tim Howard. So it's a very good performance, and I'm very excited to see him back, and it seems like back at full fitness because, as we talked about on Friday, goalkeeper is kind of a question mark for the U.S. national team. It seems like maybe less of a question mark right now.
Are you saying that you see him being on the roster when it's named this week?
I see him, if he is decently fit, as the starter for the U.S. national team.
I think that's what just happened this weekend.
Agreed.
The other guy that Bruce Arena will be getting reports on from this game is Sasha Kleshton, right? Because it really is. It's probably Kleshton versus Benny Fairharbour for that attacking midfielder spot, or it might be one roster spot between them. There's no guarantee they both make it. So Kleshton needed at least a decent performance, because I know Bruce kind of likes him, right? There was that time he tried to sign him for LA Galaxy and was very, very upset when it didn't happen. What do you make of what we saw of Sasha Kleshton in this game?
It's tough to say because now we watched the condensed version of this game, so I guess this wasn't on the condensed version. I know you saw that basically at a certain point Kleshton went over to Jesse Marsch. They had a conversation because essentially their approach wasn't working.
Yeah, so it seemed like New York were doing the old, the weird 4-2-2-2-2-2-2 column system, and it was Bradley Wright Phillips and Derek Etienne Jr. Scouting Network, also from Richmond, right, up front.
More on him later on.
And then Kleshton was essentially one of the two attackers underneath those guys, which meant he ended up being pushed out wide right. And in that 2-2-2, it's like you're wide right, but you're also central, but you're trying to do two things at once. And it didn't seem like he was getting involved enough. And then I think he got himself switched. I think it ended up being like a 4-2-3-1 with Kleshton in the centre and Derek Etienne out wide on the right. And I think that's the type of pass that we saw Kleshton put for that Howard save we talked about. Bradley Wright Phillips one-on-one with him. It's Kleshton who slips the ball behind Soyberg, I believe, for Bradley Wright Phillips. It's classic Sasha Kleshton.
It is, except that Matt Doyle has ruined Sasha Kleshton for me just a little bit. Just a little bit. Still really like him. Still think he's a very good player. But Matt Doyle's point was like the way the Red Bulls play. He gets a lot of opportunities. He being Kleshton gets a lot of opportunities to find those through balls, to find his attackers.
Because of all the Red Bulls turnovers. And
exactly. And there were times in this game where I think we both kind of looked at each other like, that was one of those moments where he just would kind of play it he'd make the wrong choice, or he played to the wrong person, or he played out of bounds. He would overhit the ball. And it was just those sort of you can't really be that wasteful because you're not going to get that many opportunities when you're playing in World Cup qualifiers. So,
but on the flip side, he's always trying stuff, and I find that kind of exciting. Like sometimes it doesn't come off.
See, I don't. Okay. I disagree because I think that
possession's a premium.
Yeah, exactly, and it's also because you want consistency. Just to always be like, oh, what a flick! Oh, what a that's great, and it's eye catching, and it makes the highlight reel. But if it doesn't lead to anything, and if it doesn't necessarily help build up and maintaining possession and maintaining or creating very consistent attacking opportunities, then it's just sort of like showboating. And I'm not saying that's what Kleshton was doing, but it's why those kind of Hollywood passes aren't as important to me as an overall comprehensive game. And I think it was tough to say Kleshton had that in this game, but that a large part of that was because it seems like he was played out of position where he wasn't as comfortable.
He talked himself back into the middle in the first half.
But when a third of the game is you being played out, for example, in that first opportunity with the Howard kick save, I think it goes out wide to Derek Etienne after that, and then it takes about 10 seconds for Kleshton to be in the frame. And if it's a usual New York attack, he's front and center, he's highly involved in that. So it just seemed like he was a little bit out of it, so you didn't get to see the best of Sasha Kleshton.
Okay, fair enough. We still think he'll make the roster though, right?
We do.
All right, and for those who are interested in the scoreline, because we've only really talked about Howard and Kleshton, it finished 1-0 to the New York Red Bulls. It was an own goal.
From Eric Miller.
I'm sorry, Eric Miller. He sort of poked it past Tim Howard as the ball was coming across. Howard sort of had no idea because he didn't expect Miller to shoot on his own goal by redirecting it. I got an email from Ira Jersey and Isaac Jersey noting that own goal is the top scorer for New York Red Bulls so far this season.
That's not bad.
It's not ideal, though, right? It's probably not what they expected with the 4-2-2-2-2.
My prediction of New York trying to figure it out as the season goes and maybe doing some big signings and big player acquisitions in the summer. I feel like it looks good right now.
And the guy that I thought they kind of were missing in this game is the next guy we went to watch, which is Dax McCarty. Who they traded away to Chicago Fire, who we saw beat Real Salt Lake 2-0. At Chicago Fire.
I'm looking at the list of players on the board who were playing this weekend, and I'm going to say Dax McCarty did the most. For me, I'm sure this doesn't matter much to Bruce Arena what my opinion is. But of all the players we saw this weekend that could be on that roster, I think Dax McCarty did the most to show that he should be there.
He looked an absolute boss in the midfield for the Chicago Fire, didn't he? Wasn't it the first highlight? It's even the first minute, actually. The first minute of this game. What does he do? Brings the ball down, turns, sprays it out wide, and then gets fouled.
It's like it's a headed ball that goes straight up in the air. There's another player right in front of him, and McCarty under pressure basically with one touch settles and turns in one fluid motion and then plays the ball out wide. It's not it's a very good piece of skill. It's not this end all be all. It's not anything particularly amazing other than it's just consistency. It's settle the ball, play it, keep it moving.
Yeah, and all respect to Sean Davies, but for New York Red Bulls, but Dax McCarty is the superior player.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so, and you could see that in the goal, where basically he splits three different players to find Alou, and then from there, I think maybe Dax gets less of the credit, and it's more of some crazy moments.
Yeah, do you want to talk about this goal?
Sure.
Is it Nikolic, the striker that you're very excited about?
Yep.
He looks a mile offside when that ball comes through. He knows, or at least Delou knows, I think Nikolic just keeps going. Yeah. So what has actually happened, you spotted it, right? Delou is actually tackled by Sonny, and Sonny's the one that pokes it through. You can't be offside when a defender plays you the pass.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly, yeah. So, Nikolic obviously would have been offside had that have come from DeLeo.
Yeah.
But instead, it comes off of Sonny, and so away to the races, and Nikolic scores. And I want to say at this point, I would listen back to our Friday show again, and we were talking about Nick Rimando and the goalkeeping situation. Mm-hmm. And I basically was saying I have faith in Nick Rimando, but he's also, in my mind, a number 3 goalkeeper, and so it's weird to all of a sudden have your number 3 potentially be your number 1. Mm-hmm. This game didn't do anything to make me feel better about him potentially starting and my concerns about that.
The thing that disappointed me the most is even when it's kind of clear that play is continuing, the ref has made this very smart, very right call that Nikolic is not offside because a defender has played him through. Mm-hmm. Nick Rimando stands there with his arm in the air. Yeah. Kind of like we were criticising Ali Long for the women's national team against France. He puts his arm in the air, doesn't get down to a saving, like crouched defensive position until it's too late.
Well, there's a really famous, there's a montage of all of Fabien Barthez's most insane moments as a goalkeeper because he's kind of nuts. And there's one where he tries to fool the striker into thinking he's offside by just standing there with his arm in the air, and the striker continues to dribble and does have a moment of like, wait, what? Why aren't you trying to defend this? And then Barthez tries to make a save. But no, because he's like, he does exactly what Nick Rimando does, which is essentially stands there, arm in the air, until the striker goes to shoot, and then he's like, oh, okay, I guess we're going. And it was just that, that makes Barthez's highlight reel from most insane moments.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't make me feel great when Nick Rimando does something that's very similar.
Oh, I bet you feel good that maybe Nikolic is scoring the goals you thought he would score.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's that. Yeah.
And then we said that this took away the credit from the original Dax McCarty pass.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. Does he get an MLS assist for this if an defending player has interfered in the meantime?
I don't think so, because I don't think anyone gets an assist. So I don't think you can have an MLS assist and then no assist.
Yeah, if there's an RSL player in between.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think so.
But credit, he does that thing where I don't normally like it, but he demands the ball from the defence. I think he goes and asks for it from his left back, which may have been Brandon Vincent, maybe future US national team left back. Does that, points to his feet, give it to me, I'm Dax McCarty, I'm in charge of this team kind of thing, right? Receives the ball, turns, splits, right? The packing stats would be 3, we thought maybe 3 or 4. And that's what starts this whole move. So Dax McCarty as the backup to Michael Bradley, but in the US national team roster, I'd be very, very excited about that.
As would I. And then maybe he and Nick Rimando can have a conversation. Rimando's going to make the roster.
How offside works.
Yeah, and Rimando also pulled out some big saves here that are worth mentioning, just to say that it's not as though he was just shambles. I think in that moment, it was so chaotic and his entire team stopped that it makes sense that the goalkeeper would also be like, oh, everyone else has stopped.
Yep.
Why hasn't that flag gone up? This isn't good. Oh, no. And then it's a goal.
I like the inner monologue you just gave of Nick Rimando.
But Chicago with the 2-0 win. Chicago also maybe...
Juninho with the other goal.
Yeah.
That McCarty-Juninho midfield looking boss.
Not bad, yeah.
I'm going to stop using that word.
So, I guess maybe Chicago also a candidate for a bounce-back performance from last season to this season?
From the whole season,
yeah.
Right?
We'll see, though. 2 weeks in, we'll see.
Yeah, 2 weeks does not a Fucci rebound make.
Not so much.
All right, speaking of, should we talk about my rebound team?
Sure.
Seattle, with that late comeback to tie it 2-2 against Montreal on that field made of patches of artificial turf.
Yeah.
You could see the squares, couldn't you?
You sure could.
You could see the joins.
I think you said it looks like it's a field that's been stitched together, and then there was a close-up, and it absolutely looked like individual squares that you couldn't quite see the stitching, but yes, your point was valid.
How should we talk about this? I mean, looking at this from a US perspective, okay. Clint Dempsey is a guy we're looking at. Jordan Morris, guy we're looking at. Christian Roldan, I don't think is in contention, right? Montreal had no US possible players unless Piatti is going to make a big announcement, which I'd be quite excited about. So how about, let's start with Clint Dempsey.
I wouldn't. Just to clarify, there may have been some players in there from Montreal that I can't quite recall, but nobody in immediate consideration. I'm just trying to hedge off the email from someone saying this guy subbed in the 70th minute and he's American. But yes. So I mean, it's looking mostly at Clint Dempsey and Jordan Morris. Yeah.
So Clint Dempsey, not a bad performance, but not the Clint Dempsey fire performance that we thought would make him impossible to ignore when Arena names his national team squad. And Arena did say we'll have to look to see if he's looking sharp, if he's looking lively. And also there's an element of risk in selecting Clint Dempsey. Almost you want to do Clint Dempsey a favour and not make him go too hard, right? If he's coming back from this irregular heartbeat, it might be worth giving him the international week off to recover.
Yeah. I mean, I think with that said, if you're cleared, you're cleared. It's not as though playing an extra game or playing an extra 2 games is going to suddenly exacerbate a condition that they've said is fine.
I see. Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But I think
not a doctor, pointing at myself. Not a doctor.
Nor am I pointing at myself. But I would say though that the bigger issue seems to have been that year off, that year away from the game, or however many months away from the game. It has definitely impacted his sharpness. There were just those moments where it took an extra touch that it wouldn't otherwise take. He looked a little bit slower. He didn't look quite as mobile on the ball. And then we had those kind of similar or familiar frustrating moments like Clint Dempsey taking a free kick and hitting it straight into the wall.
Yeah.
You have those kind of moments you're like,
Peak Dempsey could have done that, though.
Yeah, that's true. Could have and did.
Sometimes he just wants to punish players on the wall, I'm pretty sure.
But I think we were both kind of against Houston in the first week. It's away. Houston have proven themselves to be a tough opponent this season. So maybe you can explain that away a little bit. But I
Montreal
think
also kind of compact as well. They do a good job of that.
But I think I was looking for, and again, this one away, but I was expecting maybe a little bit of a bounce back, a little bit more from Clint Dempsey.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like he wasn't as involved. And even in the 2 goals, it's not necessarily that Clint Dempsey, he's the one who draws the foul that leads to the penalty. Or he's the one who creates the assist for Will Bruin.
All right. But to play Dempsey's advocate for a second, and not to equate Dempsey with the devil, that's not what I meant. He does have that one really good header, which forces a save. He has that, the series of like weird back and forth 1-2s with Morris. Do you remember that? And it was eventually, I think Dempsey scores, and it was called back for handball because Morris just touched it. Like, those moments, it looked like, oh, there's the deuce.
So then do you think you want him in the roster?
No, I kind of don't. I just think it's like too important of a game, and you just like everyone else has been playing for a long time, and he's only played literally 2 games at this point, like since way back. So I want to say no, but I'll say this: if he's there, I'm not sad, because if he's there, it means Bruce Arena thinks that he's ready to go. But I'd rather have no question marks. I'd rather just be like, all right, it's Altidore and Wood, and then it's the other guys in behind.
Yeah, I think I would go a little more than you. I think he, in my opinion, Clint Dempsey knows more about himself and soccer than I will ever learn.
It's tough because he's a bit of a hero of ours as well.
Yeah, but I would say I don't think he should be called in. I don't think he's proven himself to be ready yet. That doesn't mean he doesn't make the Gold Cup. That doesn't mean he doesn't make the June qualifiers. Yeah. I just think right now you kind of can't risk bringing in a player who might be a step slower than you need him to be, might not be quite up there when it comes to the quick decision making that you're going to need in these games.
Okay, all right. Speaking of quick, Jordan Morris, again, looked very quick in this game. He's probably going to be on the US national team roster.
Yep.
I would say the argument about Morris is more about whether he starts than whether he makes the roster.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you see from him in this game?
I mean, exactly what you said. You saw the paciness. Yeah. I'll say
in behind many times. Behind that Montreal defense many times.
I'll say, but like the most impressive run that we saw where he holds off a defender and then ends up drawing the foul from Simon. I think that Simon ends up getting the yellow card for it.
Is that the one where Dempsey hits the wall?
Yes, it starts on the wing. And that, I would say, like, just Seattle fans would know better than I, but it looked like one of those moments where it's like, yeah, that's where he should be playing. He's so fast, you can capitalize, you can use him on the counter.
Technically, he was playing centre forward, right?
Yeah.
Ship was on the left, Dempsey was in the middle, Ladera was on the right. Yeah, Morris was the centre forward,
Yeah, and it just felt like when you got him out wide and then he could come inside with that pace, he looked very good.
Space to run into, that's what it is, right?
When he was up top by himself, again, it's growing pains. I'm not saying like they should make that switch right now after 2 games. Obviously, it's something they're building towards. Yeah. But just right now, he still looks more dangerous out wide than he did in the middle.
I would agree. I mean, that's how they won MLS Cup, right? He was on the left.
Yeah.
He did have another moment when he got in behind, really held off some defenders, and I think he bent it just into the side netting. The finishing wasn't quite there. There was the Harry Ship.
Outside side netting, yeah.
Harry Ship, the Harry Ship low ball in where, he goes for it with his left foot.
Yeah. He opens up, tries to get it with his left foot, and then I think he gets poked away. Maybe if he goes with it with his right foot, he can like slide into the far netting.
No, I think he connects actually and lifts it over with his left foot.
Oh, really?
Yes. This was a moment where maybe he should have gone for it with his right foot.
Yeah. Who knows?
But I don't want to get into that reverse argument with Jordan Morris.
Yeah. It seems he can't win, apparently, no matter what.
And actually, that ball also, I'm adamant Harry Ship could have cut that ball back to Clint Dempsey, who had his arms open, and we could be having a different conversation about Dempsey scoring in this game.
Yeah, we could be. But instead, we've got the penalty taken by Ladero, and then the player that I was trying to remember who my other nominee might have been for Bounce Back Player of the Week, Will Bruin.
Will Bruin got the equaliser,
who got the move in the summer.
Minute, right?
And then move in the summer comes in, gets the equaliser, and celebrates hard.
We thought that move was weird, right?
Yeah.
We thought, why does Seattle need Will Bruin?
Yep.
But turns out this is why.
Yep.
Do you know he gets the assist on that? Actually, I don't know if he gets it officially, but Jordan Morris nods that ball down to Will Bruin. So Jordan Morris at least ends up doing something sharp in the box to set up Will Bruin for the equaliser.
So Will Bruin on the roster for you then?
Not quite, but definitely Jordan Morris.
All right.
And for the record, I still think Wood and Altidore start up top. You put Jordan Morris in last 20, 30 if you need him. Terrify some Hondurans with Jordan Morris's pace.
That works for me, yep.
Speaking of some Hondurans,
Bruce
Arena was at Sporting KC versus Dallas. I think to watch Kellen Acosta, who did not start.
Right.
Maybe to watch Walker Zimmerman, who did not start.
Right.
But he did get an eyeful of, say, Espinoza, of Figueroa. And then on the SKC side as well for America, he got Zuzi and Benny Feilhaber and Matt Beasler.
Right.
The final score was 0-0?
Correct.
The game wasn't that bad.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
But what did we see from Americans in this?
We saw essentially future American Dom Dwyer still not able to get his name on the score sheet. So SKC not yet scoring this season. I think it's SKC.
Two 0-0s.
Yeah, and DC United also. So maybe they're cursed together.
Can you get in the playoffs if you tie 0-0 every week? And I think we worked out the answer was no.
Yeah, I think the answer was no, but we're not so confident. I don't know if 34. It's not 34, is it? Yeah, 34 games. So I don't know if 34 points is enough to get you there.
Probably not.
We saw, and then we saw kind of more of the same from certain players. So, for example, Graham Zusi, I was okay with his defensive effort. I liked that you would see him routinely charging forward and really trying to get on the end, really trying to create attacking.
He's weirdly more of a wing back, even though he's playing right back, and there is a right winger. He's still playing wing back. He's Cafu. He's the Kansas Cafu.
Yeah, but I even like you get an idea of how well drilled this team is because on 3 different occasions, ball goes out for a normal goal kick, and it was the exact same center back spread, fullbacks push up, but it was in this very we've talked about it before when a defense is well organized when they all kind of stop and turn and step out at the exact same time. You can see it almost looks like a synchronized move.
Yes.
This absolutely
like a machine.
3 different times it was center backs both turn, then they spread wide, fullbacks step up, and it was just very, very regimented, and you can see that it's something they've been working on.
I mean, look at Peter Vermeer's haircut.
Yeah, right? It fits.
This is a regimented team.
And so with that, you would routinely see the ball goes out to the left, and it kind of gets pushed up that line, and then I would see from the right the Baman Bund player just flying down that right-hand side. So I like that Zusi was routinely trying to get into the attack. My frustration would be that we saw it in the 4th minute, I think. It's the exact same thing we saw up close. Zusi gets to the byline, crosses it inside. He ends up forcing a yellow card for the defender who I think dives across and handballs it. So that's good, but he never picks his head up. And it's that same thing where he doesn't create any sort of noticeable separation that he then uses to buy time to pick his head up to find a player.
Yeah.
He just kind of takes it outside and then crosses it in and hopes someone is there.
So what we've now realised, I'm pretty confident about this, is that the way that Graham Zusi works, maybe even when he plays right wing and when he plays right back, is he does have good delivery in that his technique is very good, and that without looking at the box, he can deliver a ball probably to the near post, to the far post, to the the penalty spot, wherever he needs to hit it. But he's not. But he's just aiming at zones. He's not being all right, I see Dom Dwyer making that run, I'm going to land this right in his path. And because he's looking at the floor and the ball.
And here's the difference, I would say. To go back to the Portland game, I don't think I mentioned it when we were talking about that, but there was a moment in the 32nd minute when Darlington Nabby...
Portland, LA.
Yeah, Darlington Nabby gets the ball.
Oh, yes, I remember this.
Never looks at the ball. He looks he dribbles at Garcia the entire time he is watching Garcia. He cuts inside, he cuts back outside. He's able to get around him and play the ball in. That's all because... And as I've heard my entire life, is that you practice not dribbling without looking down. Because if you look down, you're not looking at what the defender's doing, you're not reading the game. Nagby does a very good job of reading the game, reading the player, and being able to create something.
Reading his opponent. I actually heard Cristiano Ronaldo does this. I saw this in a video, that what he does is he's got, he's so confident with the ball, knows where it is, knows how to manipulate it. What he does is watch the defender's legs and waits for the defender to go a certain way, then he knows what to exploit. That's what Nagby did to Garcia. It is not what Graham Zusi does to fullbacks, and it is not how Graham Zusi crosses. So there's 2 problems there, right?
Yeah.
He's not reading the defender, and he's not reading his own attackers.
So, I mean, I'm still comfortable with the Zusi experiment at right back. And I think, as we said on Friday, that it makes sense for him to be right now the 3rd choice right back for the U.S. national team.
So it's Yedlin, and then probably it's going to be Chandler when he's available, but Zusi is the 3rd choice and mostly usefully serviceable when he does play.
So as you mentioned...
Plus he's a good dude, right?
Yeah.
So there's that thing of having him on the roster because he's team chemistry.
That works. But then you have 2 other players that are eligible. You've got Matt Beasler, and you've got, or not more than eligible, possible, likely, Matt Beasler and Benny Feilhaber.
Yeah, and we should take a moment to thank Stephen Toeld, who sent us essentially his notes from this game, so that we knew which minutes to look at for certain things, especially Sporting KC things, because Stephen is a Sporting KC fan. And thank you to everybody who tweeted at us over the weekend with US men's national team possible player moments in Major League Soccer this weekend. I loved watching my phone light up occasionally, seeing what was going on there. Let's go with Benny Feilhaber. Okay, he didn't break down this Dallas defense, right?
Nope.
FC Dallas, we should mention the reason Acosta wasn't playing, the reason Zimmerman wasn't playing, as I understand it, is they have this CONCACAF Champions League semi-final this Wednesday against Omar Gonzalez Pachuca. It is a huge game for FC Dallas, and I believe Pareja rested a couple of players because of this, right? So no Acosta, no Urruti either. They played a 4-5-1. They sat back and they invited Sporting KC to do their very best.
Yep.
Sporting KC couldn't quite open it up.
They could not. Now, they certainly tried. It was not for lack of trying. You had Benny Feilhaber, I think, as he kind of did against DC, slowly playing his way into the game. Because he started out on the left of a midfield three, and I felt like at times got maybe a little bit too far forward or got a little bit pulled out and wasn't as involved as he was later on in the game when you saw him doing a good job of moving the ball around. Even later in the first half where there was, I forget what minute it was, where he kind of like is the very quick link-up play that it's into him. He takes the touch, he plays it back.
This is a thing Stephen tweeted at us. It's the 35th minute, and Benny Feilhaber is at the centre of Sporting KC, passing, moving it from left to right. They keep possession for a long time, and it's beautiful to watch. It really is. It's really enjoyable to watch. It looks like high-quality soccer, but there's no penetration at the end of it. And I think it ends up, twice, Benny Feilhaber ends up trying to scoop the ball over, when you put your foot right under it, scoop it over the defence, see if someone can get on the end of it. I think he tried to do his Neymar doing that against PSG. It didn't quite work out, but when someone like Benny Feilhaber is sort of reduced to having that as his last option, that tells you all about FC Dallas defender.
That said, there is the one where he does that scoop in for Dom Dwyer, who times his run perfectly. It's just that he has to settle it and turn and volley.
That's true. Yeah,
that makes it very difficult.
Oh, yes, it just kind of works.
It's a high degree of difficulty there. Yeah, but I would say, and this is my bold statement, or not that bold, but I would say based on...
Is this your version of Adrian Heath should be fired?
No,
not standing by.
Not even close to that. So, you're already backing off that? Really?
Yeah. My knee is jerked back to normal position.
I would say as much as I loved Sasha Kljestan in recent U.S. performances, I would say based on early season run of form, I would say based on Bruce Arena being there, it seems like specifically to watch Benny Feilhaber, I think there's a decent chance Benny Feilhaber starts these World Cup qualifiers over Sasha Kljestan.
Yeah, based on his performances in the games, you said. Yeah, I mean, he had that exchange with Jordan Morris, right? That fills you with hope.
And to go to your Clint Dempsey point, I wouldn't be sad if it's Kljestan starting. I just think maybe it's because I've seen Feilhaber in person this season, and that kind of makes it all the more impactful when I see him do stuff 10 yards from me as opposed to on a TV screen or on a computer screen. But I think based on the performances we've seen thus far, Feilhaber just looks like he is more likely to help get attacks going when they need to get going, and he looks more likely to find, say, a streaking Bobby Wood with a really inch-perfect diagonal.
And we've literally seen Kljestan have bad games. I remember the Champions League quarterfinal against Vancouver, not a good game for him. I think that's a fair decision. We'll know more when the roster comes out. We think Wednesday, March 15th is when we expect that roster to drop. We don't really have time to get into NYCFC versus DC United. I'm sure DC United fans will be very happy not to hear about this game. Other than to say we saw the very quick highlights, the goals. Steve Birnbaum, maybe not his best game.
At a time when he probably needed to have one of his better games.
Yeah, I still think he makes the roster, but I'm less certain now. If he hadn't maybe got beat by Maxi Morales in the air, I'd be 100% convinced that he's making the roster.
I mean, you could make the argument that the fourth NYCFC goal comes from him just trying to stand up.
David Villa.
Yeah, David Villa. David Villa then just takes it to a very tight angle and shoots it past Bill Hamid to the near post. Even that, maybe you could say you could put a body in there or put a hard tackle in there. So I'd say, again, I think that was what was kind of I feel at the end of this that I'm sort of down on a lot of players, and I don't mean to be because I enjoyed all of the games that we watched. I enjoyed all the players. It's just sort of right now I'm in we can't afford to not get points out of the World Cup qualifiers, so everything matters to me. And my guess would be, as silly as it sounds, it matters more to you and me than Bruce Arena. That Steve Birnbaum could have a bad game, and Bruce Arena's I know Birnbaum's
long range of data on him instead of just this one weekend.
Yeah, but for us who are a little more in the moment, oh god, we got to win. And if Birnbaum doesn't shut that down, does he shut it down against Honduras? I don't know. And Bruce Arena, I think, is paid to not be reactionary, and so he might be that wasn't great, but it's fine.
All right, final question then. I think I have my answer, but who did the best this weekend of the US national team, sort of on the bubble roster players?
I think I stick with my original answer of Dax McCarty.
I do too. Yeah, he was really impressive for Chicago. All right, so if Dax is not on the roster this week, then this whole experiment will be will be for naught.
Then we'll be bummed for sure.
And a quick note on sort of how we're going to do our MLS coverage. I think last week we just kind of did a roundup, looking at our specific predictions. This week we looked at US men's national team players. I think what we've decided on, because we had so many good ideas sent to us, is just to do it a little differently every week and keep it fresh and keep it interesting.
I like that idea. Yeah. And we're going to have to do pretty regular updates because, for example, you mentioned Kellen Acosta not starting this game. He did get some minutes at the end of the SKC game because of the midweek.
Pachuca.
They've got the midweek clash.
Yep.
It makes me wonder if that costs him because the other player I would say really quickly probably probably did the best in terms of playing himself into contention is Sebastian Lletget.
Yes.
And I imagine that's the other reason why Bruce Arena wanted to watch that SKC Dallas game. I always want to say Houston for a second. I get nervous. FC Dallas game was because he wanted to see what Acosta could do.
Like compare and contrast, maybe Lletget. And
I mean, you think about it for a second. He was at that game in Kansas. The next day, he's at that game in LA. It makes you wonder if he was trying to do like a like-for-like comparison.
Except I feel like his office is in LA.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you said that before.
I think he's at StubHub mostly.
Yeah. But so I wouldn't be surprised if it is Lletget who's played his way in. Yep. That said, if Acosta has a very good midweek game, maybe Bruce Arena holds off that roster just enough to see what Acosta can do.
We shall see. All right, final thing on today's show, Taylor, is the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. Have you heard of this?
Once or twice, I believe.
So the way it works, Taylor, is people subscribe to the show, and then we assign them promising young players to keep an eye on. We ask them to send us reports about what those players are doing. This was a particularly good week for young players getting things done, especially, at least mostly Americans I see before me.
It's either Americans or MLS players, yeah.
Okay, all right. So do you want to start with Mason Kriz?
Sure. Scouting Marco Farfan, the 18-year-old American left-back for Portland. Farfan started in Portland's game versus the LA Galaxy. The Timbers won despite having a back line that was down 2 starters. Farfan did very well defensively overall and kept both Sebastian Lletget and Romain Alessandrini in check pretty much all night. He had a few good sequences in the offensive third as well. Most importantly, he had to hustle home to make it back to high school. Because that's where he is today.
He has class on Monday, right?
Yep.
I would say, not like an outstanding game from Farfan because we watched this game, but he did nothing wrong as far as I could tell. And the big worry, I remember from Mason's early reports, was that he was prone to the occasional defensive howler that sort of counterbalanced his attacking threat. Yeah. So no defensive howlers for Farfan in the first game. In his debut, right? Portland's youngest debutant, I believe. Something like that?
At least youngest homegrown, or like real homegrown, is that what they called him, or something like that?
I'm not quite sure what that meant. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
It means he's from Portland.
It does. He's from Portland. Russell Varner is scouting Hugo Arellano, the 19-year-old American defender for the LA Galaxy. Hugo was named to the bench of the Galaxy's 1-0 loss to Portland. He got there due to a combination of injury and card issues that the Galaxy were suffering through.
Yeah, not to him, but to other players of the Galaxy, yeah.
He did not see any action, even after centre-back and captain Jelle Van Damme was sent off after 2 yellow cards. I believe we talked about that.
I believe we did.
26-year-old Brandon Diallo was subbed in instead of the 19-year-old Arellano. I think that's fair, right? You don't put a youngster into a situation like that, I guess.
Probably not.
Up next,
we've got Ted Tracy scouting Rubio Rubin. We're moving away from MLS for this one. The 21-year-old American striker for Silkeborg. Rubio got his first minutes.
New team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rubio got his first minutes last week in Silkeborg's 2-0 victory over Randers FC, coming on in the 78th minute. He got a few more minutes in their game this weekend against FC Nordsjælland, subbing in the 63rd minute with Silkeborg already 3-0 down. Nordsjælland scored 2 more, so 5-0, before Rubin was able to stumble the ball into the back of the net. It was an ugly, ugly goal. It was. We watched it. Though it did take some good work from Rubin to get into the right position for the goal to even occur.
Oh, my. Have you seen King of the Hill?
Yes.
You know when they have the flashback to when Bill played football for the local high school, and they used to call him the bulldozer?
Is it just because he just runs through people?
He would just slowly charge forward, and people would be tackling him, and he'd just drag them with him, and he just slowly bulldoze his way over the line. That was basically what Rubio Rubin did to score.
He did. I think he ends up scoring while on his back. It's a very strange sequence of events, but it's a goal nonetheless. So whatever.
Up next, Bill Quaid is scouting Derek Etienne Jr., the 20-year-old Haitian attacker for the New York Red Bulls. We already talked a little about this, right?
Yep.
After an outstanding season with Red Bull 2, Bill says, it looks like Derek is going to have a role with the first team this year. He certainly does. He came in as a sub in the opening win versus Atlanta and started this weekend's win over Colorado. While his stat line is nothing special, 1 foul, 1 yellow card, his presence in the early season lineups is very positive.
This is true. Final report comes from Andrew Baird, scouting Josh Perez, the 19-year-old American forward for Fiorentina's academy. No major news of late, says Andrew, though Perez has been featuring and playing well for the Fiorentina under-19s. He scored this weekend in their 4-0 win over Latina, taking advantage of a defensive error to get on the end of a long diagonal ball and calmly slot home past the keeper.
Hey.
That goal gives Perez 4 in his last 4 appearances and brings his total up to 8 goals in 15 league appearances for the U19 squad. Not a bad return for the young American, says Mr. Baird.
I've also got one eye on Perez as possibly making that U20 World Cup roster. He'd be a great addition to that team. But stick him on the wings.
I'd be all right with that.
Yeah.
He's pretty decent.
One quick mention for something that we haven't talked about. Bobby Wood scored a great goal for Hamburg this weekend to give them a 2-1 win to help in their relegation battle. I think I'll put a link to that goal in the show notes because it's really, really fancy footwork at the top of the box to make it happen.
All types of links being promised.
I mean, I guess I'm editing, right? So at least I'm not promising that you'll do it.
Yeah, I
everything
appreciate
that I
that.
do.
I appreciate
That's
that.
fair. If you'd like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you will be supporting the Total Soccer Show in doing so. Go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. All the information will be there. And a reminder that also, if you want to buy a Fuji rebounder, the link will be in the show notes as well.
There we are.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy. And one more reminder that we've got an event coming up pretty soon, Mr. Grove.
Oh, yeah. Thursday, March 23rd, we will be at Penny Lane Pub, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to be hosting a soccer trivia night sponsored by Guinness. I'm super excited to do this.
As am I.
The Facebook event invite has been sent out. Guess where I'm going to put that, Taylor?
Where are you going to put that, Daryl?
In the show notes.
That makes sense. And with that, I'll say thanks to you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow.